at what she saw, and felt every rational at what she saw, and felt every rational thought she'd ever had quietly leave her body. We'll get to her story, but first I want to talk about something most people don't consider before they agree to watch someone else's home. When a family leaves for a trip, when they hand you their spare key, and walk you through the thermostat settings, show you where the cat food is kept, in all of that ordinary practical handover of information, there is one thing they almost never tell you. They don't tell you what the house is like at 3 in the morning. They don't tell you which floorboards groan under no weight at all. They don't tell you why the dog refuses to go down the basement stairs. They don't tell you about the dreams they've started having since they moved in, or the light that flickers in the east bedroom, or the way the temperature in the back hallway seems to drop. Just slightly, just enough, no matter how high you turn the heat. They don't tell you these things because most of them have trained themselves not to think about them. And then they leave, and you're alone. And the house has been waiting for someone to finally pay attention. Tonight, 3 people share what they found when they did. Out of his mouth were, just don't go into out of his mouth were, just don't go into the basement. I should have told you, I'm sorry. Dara was 24 when this happened. She was between apartments, subletting a room from a friend, working 2 jobs, trying to pull together a security deposit for a place of her own. In Hartwell, a friend of her father's, someone she'd known peripherally her whole life, offered to pay her $700 to watch his property for 2 weeks. She said yes before he finished the sentence. The setup was simple. Gus and his wife Patricia were flying to Lisbon to visit their daughter, who had taken a position teaching English abroad. 2 weeks. The house was a farmhouse about 40 minutes outside a small town in rural Missouri, the kind of drive where the last gas station disappears in your rearview mirror and the fields go on forever in every direction. Her responsibilities: feed the cat, collect the mail, run the faucets every few days to keep the pipes from freezing, and call Gus if anything felt wrong. She packed for 2 weeks. They drove out on a Sunday afternoon in late November and met Gus and Patricia at the property before they left for the airport. The house was beautiful. She told me this several times, almost like she needed me to understand it before anything else. Beautiful. Not in a haunted house way, in a real, lived-in, family way. High ceilings, thick plaster walls painted warm cream, wood floors that had been walked on for 100 years and showed it, a kitchen that smelled like rosemary and cast iron, and family photographs going back to what looked like the 1940s, filling an entire wall in the front hallway. It felt safe, warm, the kind of house that holds its people. Gus showed her around. The cat's name was Biscuit, a large elderly tabby who immediately pressed his face against Dara's ankle. He walked her through the thermostat, showed her where the extra firewood was stacked, explained the quirk with the kitchen faucet that ran cold before hot. And then he walked her to the basement door, a heavy wooden door off the main hallway, painted the same cream as the walls. He reached for the handle, paused, and then seemed to change his mind about something. "Nothing down there you need," he said. "Just storage. I'd leave it alone." She didn't think anything of it. Old houses have basements full of boxes and old furniture and reasons to avoid them. She had no reason to go down there. She said okay, and then Patricia appeared with a list of emergency numbers and an envelope with the first week's payment inside, and Gus's hesitation was swept up in the bustle of their departure. They hugged, they left, and Dara was alone. The first night passed without incident. She cooked a simple dinner, watched something on her laptop, fell asleep reading in the guest room. Biscuit slept at the foot of the bed, just as Gus had said he would, and she woke up the next morning feeling rested in the way you only do in a house that isn't yours. No obligations, no familiar sounds to drag you toward the day. The second day was equally peaceful. She drove into town for groceries, spent the afternoon reading by the fireplace, texted her friends. Completely ordinary. The second night was when things shifted. It started with the cat. Around 9 o'clock that evening, Biscuit, who had been sitting contentedly in the armchair across from Dara, suddenly stood up. She described it as if a string had been pulled, rigid, immediate, all four paws on the cushion. His gaze moved to the hallway and then his ears flattened. She looked at the hallway. Nothing. The lamp in the entrance cast the same warm light it always did. The house was quiet. She looked back at Biscuit. He had not moved, still staring, still flat-eared. After a few minutes, he stepped down from the chair, walked past her, and went to the base of the staircase. He sat there facing upward. He would not come into the living room for the rest of the night. Dara went to bed around 11 with Biscuit notably absent from his usual spot at the foot of the bed. She left the small lamp on in the corner, a habit in unfamiliar places, and fell asleep faster than she expected. She woke at 2:17 a.m. She knows the time because the first thing she did was reach for her phone. Got an old reflex on check the time, establish where you are, prove to your nervous system that everything is ordinary. The phone read 2:17. The lamp was off. She hadn't turned it off. She was certain of that in the same way you're certain of your own name. And the bedroom door, which she had closed before getting into bed, was open, not wide. About 4 inches. A gap just wide enough to see the hallway beyond, and in the hallway, the dark. She lay completely still. And the silence in that farmhouse at 2 a.m. was unlike any silence she had experienced. Rural silence has a texture. Wind through old glass, the tick of pipes, the occasional creak of wood settling in the cold. Natural sounds that you don't notice until they stop. And they had stopped. What replaced them was a quiet so complete and so pointed that it felt intentional, like something was holding its breath. Dara lay on her back looking at the 4-inch gap in the doorway and ran through every logical explanation she could construct. The lamp cord had pulled loose somehow during the night. The latch hadn't caught properly and the door had drifted open in a draft. The silence was just silence. She spent a long time in that logic. She was not by nature a fearful person, but she could not get up and close the door. She told me that she can't fully explain why. Her body simply refused. She lay there, asleep. She didn't intend to. It just asleep. She didn't intend to. It just happened, the way exhaustion eventually overrides even the most alert mind. In the morning, the lamp cord was unplugged from the wall, pulled out cleanly, not knocked loose. The door was open. Biscuit was in the kitchen eating breakfast, completely unbothered. The house was full of morning light and had resumed its warm, ordinary appearance. She almost let herself believe it. Then she went upstairs to use the bathroom, and she saw the chair. There was a small wooden chair in the upstairs hallway. She had noticed it before. It was the kind of decorative accent you find in old houses, holding a stack of books and a framed photograph. It had been against the wall opposite the guest bathroom. She'd walked past it a dozen times. It was now positioned directly in front of her bedroom door, facing it, as if someone had placed it there deliberately, as if someone had sat in it and watched her door while she slept. Dara picked up her phone and called Gus. He was 9 time zones away and it was the middle of his night, but he answered on the 3rd ring. She described the chair, she described the door and the lamp, and he went very quiet in a way that told her, even before he spoke, that he was not surprised. And then he said, "Just don't go into the basement. We should have told you before we left. I'm sorry we didn't tell you." She asked him what he meant. He said, "Just don't go down there. You'll be fine if you don't go down there." And then, gently but firmly, he ended the call. Dara packed her bag. She left the key on the kitchen counter, refilled Biscuit's food bowl, and walked out of the house without looking back. She drove the 40 minutes to town, checked into a motel. I understood, and that he was sorry he understood, and that he was sorry he hadn't been more upfront with her. She never went back. Gus never explained what he meant. She never asked again. But she told me that in the years since, whenever she thinks about that upstairs hallway, about that chair, positioned and waiting in the dark, she has the same thought every time. And whatever was sitting in it wasn't trying to scare her. It was just watching, like it had been watching for a very long time, and she was simply the latest one. I want to be completely honest about something before I tell you this. I have gone back and forth for years about whether to share it. Not because it isn't true, but because the thing that happened, the thing I still can't explain, is so quiet and so undramatic on the surface that I've always been afraid it won't land the way it felt. I grew up in a household where the word grew up in a household where the word unexplained was treated as a temporary condition, not a permanent category. If you couldn't account for something, you looked harder. You found more data. You adjusted your model and tried again. Then the idea that something could simply be unknowable, that some things existed outside the reach of evidence, was not seriously entertained at our dinner table. I inherited that worldview completely. I was a skeptic the way some people are tall, not as a choice, just as a fact of how I was built. I say all of this so that what follows doesn't sound like the overactive imagination of someone predisposed to spooking themselves. I was not that person. I want that on the record. And the house belonged to the Marshfields, the parents of a co-worker of mine named Priya. Her parents were lovely people, retired, who lived in a large Victorian-style home about 90 minutes north of the city, where I was living at the time. They were taking a cruise, 15 days through the Mediterranean, and needed someone responsible to stay in the house, look after things, collect the mail. Priya vouched for me. I said yes. The arrangement was informal. No payment, just a nice place to stay and a favor exchanged between families. The house was remarkable. I want to give it its due because it deserves it. 3 full stories, original Victorian woodwork, crown moldings you could spend an afternoon just looking at. Tall, narrow windows that made every room feel like a painting. A library on the 2nd floor with built-in shelves, floor to ceiling, filled with what appeared to be decades of accumulated books with no organizational principle whatsoever. Old paperback mysteries next to leather-bound encyclopedias next to what appeared to be a collection of seed catalogs from the 1980s. I was genuinely excited. I brought 3 books of my own, a project I'd been meaning to work on, good coffee. I was going to enjoy this. Night 1. I slept better than I had in months, woke up refreshed, made eggs. I sat by one of those tall windows and watched the morning light move across the yard. I thought, this is exactly what I needed. Night 2 was when the radio came on. There was an analog radio on the kitchen counter. Old, the kind with a curved wooden body and a round dial and a fabric-covered speaker face. Probably from the late 1960s or early 1970s. The kind of thing you keep because it was your grandmother's or because it looks nice. I had assumed it was decorative, and I hadn't looked closely at whether it was even plugged in. At 3:04 a.m., it turned on. The sound woke me immediately. Not because it was loud, but because it was entirely out of place. A dense, layered static. The kind that has almost a quality of depth to it, like it's coming from a long distance. Not white noise. Something more textured, more directional. I went downstairs, found the radio on the counter exactly where it had been, the dial glowing faintly orange, static filling the kitchen. And I unplugged it, went back to bed. Told myself the timer, if it had one, must have been set from decades ago and triggered by some coincidence of the date. Night 3, 3:04 a.m. I was already half awake waiting for it, and it came. Same sound, same quality, same relentless static. I went downstairs, And this is the part I've never been fully able to rationalize, no matter how many frameworks I've tried to apply to it. The radio was not plugged in. I had unplugged it the night before and left the cord draped over the back. It was still draped over the back. The plug was hanging loose, and the radio was on. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. I ran through everything I knew about how radios work, how electricity works, what residual charge might remain in old capacitors, what acoustic phenomenon could produce that particular sound from an unpowered source. I had explanations for all of it. None of them were convincing. But I told myself they were, and I went back upstairs. On night 4, I wrapped the cord around the radio body, put it in the pantry, and closed the pantry door. At 3:04 a.m., the static came through the pantry door as if the door weren't there. After that, I stopped trying to explain the radio. I just accepted it as a thing that happened and focused on sleeping through it, which I mostly managed. Humans are remarkably adaptable to things that don't physically harm them. But the radio wasn't really the thing. The thing was what started happening after night 4. A feeling that arrived with the radio and didn't leave when the static stopped. It's difficult to describe. I want to be precise because I think the imprecision is part of why people dismiss these kinds of experiences. So let me try. Every night, sometime after the radio started and while it was still playing, I would become aware of a change in the room. Not a visual change, not a sound, or more like a shift in pressure. The way a room changes when another person walks into it, that subconscious registering of displaced air and added presence. Except there was no one there. I slept with all the lights on from night 4 onward. The lights helped with the fear. They did not help with the feeling. The presence, and I'm using that word carefully because it's the most accurate word I have, was not aggressive. It wasn't threatening. If I had to characterize it, and I would say it felt like being looked at by something that was profoundly curious about you. The way you might feel if you were the only human a very old and very patient creature had ever seen. Observed. That's the word. I felt observed. On the 8th day, something happened that I have turned over in my mind probably more than anything else in my adult life. I was working in the second-floor library. I had been using it as my workspace all week. Good light, comfortable chair, a solid old desk that had clearly absorbed decades of productive work. I knew that room well by day 8. That afternoon, I looked at the bookshelf differently than I had before. I can't explain why. Something drew my attention to a particular section, a row of older hardcovers, the kind with cloth spines and faded gold lettering. I walked over and, for no reason I could name, reached behind the row of books. My hand found a small leather journal, thin, about the size of a paperback. I had no label on the cover, no name, no date. I should have put it back. It wasn't mine to read. I opened it. The entries were undated. The handwriting varied throughout. Sometimes a quick, forward-leaning scrawl, sometimes very slow and deliberate, as if the writer was choosing each letter carefully. Most of the entries were entirely ordinary. Weather observations, notes about a garden, what sounded like grocery reminders. There's a description of a visit from someone's grandchildren that went on for 2 cheerful pages. But near the back, the handwriting changed, became very controlled, very slow, as if whoever wrote it wanted every word to stay exactly where they put it. There were only a few lines. I've memorized them because I've thought about them so many times. It wakes me at the same hour every night. I have long since given up looking for reasons. I think now that it is not malicious. I think it only wants to know that someone is here, that the house is not empty. I have decided to let it have that much. The entry ended there. The remaining pages were blank. I don't know who wrote that journal. I don't know how long it had been behind those books. I put it back exactly where I found it, and I didn't mention it to Priya or her parents. I finished the full 15 days. I kept the lights on every night, At 3:04 a.m., the radio played, and every night, as the presence settled into the room beside me, patient and still and watchful. And every night I did what the journal told me to do. I let it have what it seemed to want. I was there. The house was not empty. And slowly, very slowly, the feeling changed. By the last few nights, I didn't feel observed anymore. I felt, strangely, like company. Marcus said there are two things he knows for certain about that night. The first is that he was alone in that house. He had checked every room, every door, every window. He was certain. The second thing he knows is that someone used a key to open the front door from the outside. He heard the lock turn. He watched the handle move. And there was no one there. Marcus grew up in a mid-sized city in the Midwest, the kind of neighborhood where families stay for generations, where you know your neighbors not just by name but by routine. You know which lights come on when, which cars leave at what hour, which houses have dogs that bark at the mail carrier, and which ones go completely quiet in winter. His neighbor across the back alley was a woman named Mrs. Halverson. She had lived in her house for over 40 years. Her husband Ernie had lived there with her until he passed, about 3 years before any of this happened. She was a gentle, self-contained woman in her late 70s, the kind who brings things over when people are sick and never makes a big deal of it. Marcus had known her his whole life. He had shoveled her walk in winter since he was 12 years old. He knew her cats. He knew where she kept her spare key. When Mrs. Halverson went into the hospital for a knee replacement in early March, she'd been putting it off for years. The surgery was long overdue. It was the most natural thing in the world for her to ask Marcus to look after things while she recovered. A few days in the hospital, and a few more recuperating at her daughter's house in the suburbs. A week total, maybe 10 days. He was 19. He had no reason to be afraid. This was Mrs. Halverson's house. He'd been inside it hundreds of times over the course of his entire life. The routine was simple. Come by morning and evening. Feed the cats. There were two, an orange one named Carl and a small gray one named June. Bring in the mail. Make sure nothing was leaking. Text Mrs. Halverson's daughter if anything seemed wrong. For the first 2 days, he came and went. Didn't stay long. Fed the cats, checked things over, left. On the third night, it was late and cold, and he'd had a long day, and instead of going back home, he settled onto Mrs. Halverson's couch with a bag of chips and something to watch on his phone. The cats climbed on him. The house was warm. He fell asleep without meaning to. He woke to the sound of the front door. Not a knock, not the bell, the sound of the deadbolt. The Marcus described it to me very specifically. The front door of Mrs. Halverson's house had a particular lock. A heavy old Schlag deadbolt that her husband had installed in the 1980s. The kind with a very specific two-part sound when it turns. A heavier click as the bolt releases, then a lighter click as the mechanism completes its rotation. He had heard that lock thousands of times over his entire life. He knew exactly what it sounded like. That is what woke him. He sat up on the couch and turned toward the front door. The handle was moving, not rattling, not vibrating. Moving, deliberately, in the specific rotation of a handle being turned by a hand. The door opened, about 4 inches, maybe 5. It swung inward on its hinges with the faint creak he knew well, and he was looking at a vertical slice of the front porch and the cold, dark outside, and there was no one there. The door held open for what Marcus estimates was 3 or 4 seconds, and then it closed. He heard the handle rotate back. He heard the heavy click of the deadbolt turning, locking itself from the outside. Marcus sat on that couch and did not move. Carl the cat had jumped down from his lap the moment the lock turned and was now sitting at the foot of the stairs, completely still, staring at the front door with the focused, whole-body attention that cats reserve for things humans generally can't perceive. June was nowhere to be seen. Yeah, Marcus told me that his first instinct, the very first thing his rational mind produced, was the thought, someone has a key. He went through it methodically, because that's how he's wired. Mrs. Halverson was in the hospital. Her daughter had a key but was at her own home 40 minutes away and had no reason to come by at this hour. Mrs. Halverson had told him he had the only spare. He reached into his jacket pocket without thinking. Still there. The spare key on a small metal ring with a yellow tag that Mrs. Halverson had labeled with a piece of masking tape and her own careful handwriting. He sat with those facts for a long time. Then he called the non-emergency police line. He was embarrassed about it, he told me. He felt like he was going to sound ridiculous. He told the dispatcher only what he could prove. He was house-sitting. He had heard the front door open and close. He didn't know who had accessed it. An officer arrived within 20 minutes, walked the full perimeter of the property, checked every window and door, and found nothing. No signs of entry, no signs of anyone having been on the porch. The front porch had a light layer of snow that had fallen that afternoon, and the officer shone his flashlight across it carefully. No footprints. The officer noted that old deadbolts could sometimes loosen with age and appear to shift under changes in temperature or barometric pressure, or air pressure differentials through old door frames. He'd seen it before. Probably nothing to worry about. Marcus thanked him. The officer left. Marcus sat back down on the couch and stared at the door until morning. He didn't sleep. He didn't turn the television on. He just sat there in the warm house with the cats and waited for something he couldn't name and didn't fully believe in and could not stop waiting for. It didn't come again. The next morning, Mrs. Halverson called to check in, and he told her everything was fine. The cats were happy, the mail was stacked neatly on the table, no leaks, no problems. But before he hung up, he asked her something that had been forming in his mind all night. He tried to ask it casually, offhandedly, the way you ask about something when you want to seem like you're only mildly curious. He asked her if there was anyone else who had ever had a key to the house. Old neighbors, previous house sitters, family members who no longer used theirs. And wanted to ring the bell and wake me. So I wanted to ring the bell and wake me. So I had a key made just for him. He used it every night for 30 years. Marcus kept his voice even. He asked, "And what happened to that key after he passed?" She was quiet for a moment. "I never found it," she said. "I assumed it was in his jacket. We buried him in his good jacket." Another silence. Then, almost softly, she added, 3 years ago last Tuesday, that would have been, let me think, yes, about this time of year, about this cold." Marcus finished out the week. The lock didn't move again. He told me he's thought about it a lot, about why it happened that one night, and not before, not after. And the only thing he's ever come up with is this. For 3 years, no one had been staying in that house at night. Mrs. and Halverson was there, yes, but she was always there. She was part of the house. The house knew her. Marcus was different. Marcus was someone new, a stranger, sleeping on the couch in the dark. And maybe Ernie Halverson, wherever Ernie Halverson is, came home one last time to check, to make sure the house was being looked after, to make sure the person sleeping on his wife's couch was someone who could be trusted. The door opened, held for 3 seconds. Then it closed and locked. Diane didn't open again. Marcus passed whatever inspection that was. He'd like to think he did. Anyway, I've been collecting stories like these for a while now. And the thing I keep noticing, the pattern I keep coming back to, is that the scariest ones are never the loudest ones. They're not the ones with dramatic moments and things that jump and sounds that make you scream. Those stories are easy. Your nervous system knows what to do with them. You're frightened, and then the fright passes. and then you're fine. The stories that stay with you are the ones that lodge quietly somewhere behind your sternum and just don't leave. The ones where what happened is so small and so specific that it couldn't possibly be anything other than real. A chair moved in a hallway, a radio with no power, a door that opened 4 inches and then gently, carefully closed. These are the stories that find you later, in the middle of an ordinary day, standing in your own kitchen, or lying in your own bed at an unremarkable hour. And you think, the house I'm in right now, the house I've lived in for years, that I think I know completely. What does it do when I'm not here? What has it always done? What has been sitting quietly in the rooms I'm not in, patient as anything, just waiting for me to finally pay the right kind of attention? Maybe nothing. Probably nothing. But there's a reason the people in these stories didn't go back. There's a reason Dara left that morning without finishing her breakfast. There's a reason Marcus sat facing that front door until the sun came up. There's a reason the journal in the Marshfield library had been hidden behind the books instead of left out to be found. Some things, once you know them, can't be unknown. Some doors, once you know what's on the other side, you don't open twice. If you've had an experience like any of these, and I know some of you have, because you've shared them with me and I keep everyone, you already know exactly what I mean. And if you haven't, well, you've probably just been lucky. So far.